Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and this is our Success Mentorship class, number 216. Wow. We have people joining us today on Instagram. We have folks joining us today on Facebook, and we have our Success Mentorship Network group on Zoom. Today, our topic is resurrection of the new you. Resurrection of the new you. And this, is, of course, is a topic based on our book, The 12 Universal Laws of Success, your success guide, your recipe book for achieving incredible success. And it's available on Amazon and on all of the digital websites, and of course on our website, Herbert Harris. Also talking today about our upcoming webinar, Resurrecting the New You webinar, free webinar on Monday night at 8 p.m. And you can go to herbertharris.com and find out more information about that, register for it. Before we get started, let us put ourselves in a proper place to receive the message. Let us do our meditation. So sit straight up in your seats. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Let it out slowly. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Let it out slowly. And in this state of peace and relaxation, we are at peace with ourselves. I am at peace with myself. Let us affirm that together. I am at peace with myself. Once more, I am at peace with myself. Just let that peace sink in. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. And in this state of peace and relaxation, my mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. Let us affirm that together. My mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. Once more. My mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Let me admit all of our other people. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First, happy Easter to everyone. And this is this has inspired our message for today. You know, I always like to open with a quote, and this is from Robert Flack. And he said, "The resurrection gives my life meaning and direction and the opportunity to start over, no matter what my circumstances." And that is really the essence of the class today. I read that again. The resurrection gives my life meaning and direction and the opportunity to start over no matter what my circumstances. Now, this is a powerful concept, folks, because when we think of resurrection, I like to look at two aspects of it. It's like raising from the dead, but it's also restoration to life. So it's like a duality there. I'm going to give a quick overview of, you might say, the Easter story. And it basically says that on Palm Sunday, Christ came into Jerusalem, and Jerusalem in Hebrew means city of peace. came into Jerusalem, and he was heralded and saluted by the masses, hailed as the King of Kings. Within a week, he was facing a trial. The people had turned against him. He was suffering. He was crucified, dead and buried, resurrected from the grave, went back throughout Galilee, and was not recognized by his followers. Now, isn't that might say the quickest version of the Easter story? But there's a lot of symbology here, and that's when I approach the Bible, I like to look at it from a spiritual, metaphysical, symbolic point of view. This message is a message to us on many levels. First key is that everything is about change. That there are basically four principles operating in the universe, and change is number one. Everything is about change. Two is time. So if we had a vision of what our lives, we actually live our lives on the river of time, and the river is always moving. Now that is very interesting. The river is always moving, and you have choice and you have principle. So you have time, change, choice, and principle. And so that's really how life evolves. Things happen over time. We confront those things. We make certain choices. We create new realities for ourselves. Second principle. Everything has a season. That no matter what is going on in your life right now, it's very easy to get wrapped up in your present circumstances and not see potential for the future. So everything has a season, a time to live, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest. And so what this is saying is no matter what situation is going on in your life right now, it always comes to an end. No matter how dark the night, the sun always rises. No matter how much suffering one goes through, there's always another day. The third principle is that life proceeds in stages, in steps. And the clue to that, there's a scripture that says, when I was a child, I thought as a child. But now I'm a man, I put away childish things and I think as a man. And what this is saying is that we live our life in stages. And at each stage of our life, that stage is determined by our thoughts, our emotions, our habits, and our relationships. So it is in this context now that we can talk about resurrection and this idea, this new you. At each stage in our lives, we move from one stage to the next in a process. And we call this the resurrection process. This is like the theme of our webinar on Monday. The process is a four-step process in which you assess where you are. So right now, let's look at our lives. If you're in a situation right now where you are not happy, where things are not going the way you want them to go, then assess that situation, look at it and see where you're at. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is bringing you joy? What is bringing you unhappiness? The second step is to take corrective action. Many times we have challenges with that because sometimes we can't figure it out by ourselves. In other words, when we are confronted with some of the changes in life, some of the challenges in life, we need help. One of the interesting things is that some of the secrets of life are can only be accessed when two or more people come together. So in this second stage where we determine what changes we have to make in our lives, we may need help, we may need more assistance, more direction. The third stage is now based on your new thoughts, your new emotions, your new habits, your new relationships to set new goals. And then the fourth stage is to get busy making it happen. So when we talk about resurrection, if we look at life, it's like we get on a point in our lives where stuff is going good. And because of the changes in the world, because of some of our own actions, things change and they're not going so good. As the dog sitting on a nail, eventually it becomes so painful to stay where we are that we decide to get up and make a change. And this change must be complete. That's the idea of resurrection. You can't steal second with your feet on first. That was a book. So you have to be prepared to make this change, this complete disconnect from your old life to your new life. This idea of resurrection has been dealt with like there's some big resurrections, some big changes where you go from the old you to the new you. Example, when we look at the 4 stages of life, the first stage of life is the stage of education. And this is where you learn, this is like the first 20, 25 years of your life. Now, like, let's say the first 20, where you really learn the rules of the game. You learn the sense of right and wrong. You learn all the things that you need to know to live, to exist. The interesting thing about the first stage is most of the learning, most of the experiences you get come from other people who may or may not be together themselves. You know, if you've had parents who uplift you, who motivate you, who love you, who encourage you, great. Many of us come from parents who didn't do that, who were critical, situations that were dire, bad situations. So these things can really impact you, but this is what happens in that first stage of life. The second stage of life is the stage of sensation experience, where you learn how to feel, learn about love, sex, and things that titillate the senses. The third stage of life is the stage of power, where you take control of your mind, of your emotions, of your body, and you're able to make things happen. The fourth stage of life is the stage of immortality, where you really look at what impact you had on the world. What is your purpose? And so when we look at this idea of resurrection, when we superimpose it upon these 4 stages of life, let's look at what happens. The first stage of life, when I was a child, I thought as a child. In that learning stage of life, you come away with certain assets, certain thoughts, certain value systems. But there comes a time when we have to leave the nest. You know, as parents, it's necessary, it's important to, as they say, train up a child in the way when he's young, and he will not depart with it when he's grown. And so this idea of resurrection, as you are in this first stage of life, whatever your situation is, when you move to the next stage of life, when you're 18, 19, 20, when you move out into the next stage of life and taste, when you get out of your mother's house, out of your father's house, and you start tasting the fruits of the real world, love, sex, drugs, things that titillate the senses. That's like the first resurrection, when you finally realize that I have to set away childish things. We see our children, they want to act grown. That's like a type of a metamorphosis, a type of resurrection. They want to act grown, they want to act like you. And so this first stage of life, the resurrection there is, now let me take what I have been given as a young person and let me move into the second stage. Let me create that new me, which is the sensation. Many times when our kids go away to college, I encourage kids to leave home and go away to college or go away to work, go to the service, because then when they get on their own, they get a chance to see the new you, who they really are. So that gets you the first resurrection. The second resurrection is at the end of that second stage of life. There comes a time in our lives where we get either consumed by our passions, consumed by the feelings, the good stuff, the drugs, the love, whatever those emotions and sensations are, and we can get stuck there. See, a part of resurrection is like when you're stuck, you need to be reborn. You need to recreate yourself. There needs to be a new you. So for all of us who are listening right now, if you're stuck, if you're in a situation in your relationships where you seem to be getting the same things over and over, if you're in a situation with your job where they're promoting people left and right and you've been stuck in the same place for 10, 15 years, if you're in a situation with your family where people are just not getting along, that whatever that situation is, if you're stuck in it, that's a clue that it's time for a resurrection. And that resurrection is to bring about new thoughts, new emotions, new habits, and new relationships. When we go from the second resurrection into the third stage of life, the age of power, if you don't master those things, if you don't take control of your emotions, your appetites in that second stage, you'll stay stuck there. And so that's why this whole resurrection concept is so powerful. It's really resurrection and metamorphosis. It's really about changing. Thank you. What you say, baby? Sade, thank you. JC, all the Barbados, all of our friends on Instagram, thanks for joining us this morning. Those on Facebook, thank you for joining us. And so as we move out of the second stage of life, we have to take control of our thoughts, of our emotions, of our habits, of our relationships to move into that third stage, the stage of power. And in this stage of power now, we learn that we have the capacity to get things done. Those of you who are up this time of morning, 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, clearly you have a commitment to yourself. You have a desire to transform yourself from wherever you are right now to something better, something bigger, something more profound. And it is in this third stage of life that you master that. If you do not make the resurrection from the second to the third stage, you stay stuck, ruled by your passions. The third stage of life, the issue is so much your ego. The resurrection in the third stage of life often boils down to taming your ego. You know, once you get to that place, and you've seen it happen, what's happened to us, and we've seen other people, when they get to a position of power, they can act real ugly. So many of our leaders, people who started out seemingly on a good path, when they get to the top of the heap, when they get to the power stage of their lives, they execute that power in accord with their ego, in accord with greed, in accord with passion, in accord with things maybe that even hurt other people. So this third resurrection out of that stage of power is where you have to take control of the thoughts, your emotions, your habits, and your relationships, literally to humble yourself and to bring yourself in check so that you can then move to the fourth stage of life, which is the stage of immortality. If you do not handle the stage of power properly, we remember Hitler, but we don't remember him positively. We remember Mother Teresa, but we remember her positively. And so it's in this transformation, what do you want your life to have stood for, where you see bigger than yourself, and that resurrection into that next level of life, that stage of immortality, puts you often in that stage. There's a poem, Thanatopsis, and it's about that end of life period. And I think it says, thou go not like the quarry slave at night, scourged to his dungeon, but renewed and soothed approach thy grave, like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. And so that final fourth resurrection is really about what you want your life to have stood for, the impact that you live. So now these are like some of the big resurrections, and the idea with resurrection is to create a new person, a new dynamic. We used to do training in prisons many, many years ago. And one of our main trainers, he had a theme, and he used to tell, we were working with prisoners who were getting out of prison within a year. and we were helping prepare them for the outside world. And he had a nice theme, and he said, look, when you get out of here, don't go back to the same playground. In other words, the environment that you're in. So when you go through your transformation, your resurrection, you may have to leave where you're at, because your environment has a vibration. If you stay in it, it can capture you. He said, don't go back to the same playthings. So many of the playthings may capture you. Sometimes things capture you. Brand names may capture. There's some people that live their lives for brand names. And I mean, God bless them. I ain't mad with them, but that's just whatever rules you on a material level, playthings. And he said, most of all, don't go back to the same playmates. So don't go to the same playground, playthings, or playmates. And so this resurrection process now is like, how do you go from where you are to where you want to be? The next concept is like you have a personal resurrection where this happens consistently. So if we live our lives in steps and stages, we get to a certain stage in life. For example, we come out of school, we get into a relationship, we have a family, we have a good job, things are going well. That's a plateau. See, life is like a great stair step up a mountain. And each time you get on a certain stair step, you feel at peace with yourself and everything seems to be good, and it's easy to become complacent. But you know how life is. We live in the sea of time and change. Things change. The job may get shaky. Your kids may, sometimes you look at your kids and you're like, maybe I want to do a DNA on myself. Okay. Your kids are acting in such a way you're wondering, my goodness, how could I have done this? And so on every one of these stages in life, we create this vibration, this plateau, and these thoughts, emotions, habits, and relationships bring about a vibration of pain, of disappointment. And you say, I got to move on to the next level. That's a personal resurrection. And the process for making this personal resurrection, we go back now to the 4 steps, the webinar steps, the new you steps, is at each stage in your growth, your personal resurrection is facilitated by the 4 steps. By assessing your present situation. When you get to a plateau, why are you not happy? Why are you not fulfilled? Why are the things that you wanted to do not happening? You get to that plateau, what emotions are ruling you? What habits are controlling you? What relationships are impacting you? And so these 4 steps, again, the steps to resurrect the new you, the steps to create the new you. You assess your situation. You look at what's making you unhappy. You commit to make the changes. You get help if necessary. You think new thoughts. You think new emotions. You look at new habits. You look at new relationships. 3, you set new goals. Because once you see the changes necessary to bring about this new you have to make it a goal. We are goal-seeking creatures. And if we don't make it a goal, something will distract us. And then 4th, we got to make a plan. Once you made the goal, you make a plan and then execute the plan on a daily basis. And these are the 4 steps that we're going to be talking about in the webinar on Monday night. So be sure to go to herbertharris.com and click on the top to register for the free webinar. So now let's take this on to the next level. As you progress along through your life at these different stages, going up this mountain, the more you see, the more you can be. Oprah said, when I know better, I do better. When you see more, you can be more. There's an African proverb and it says that the man who never left home thinks his mother is the best cook in the world. So this whole process of growth, and those of you who are watching today and in the future, the fact that you are seeking, there's a spiritual principle, seeking you must find. Knocking, it will be open. Asking, it will be answered. The fact that you are seeking, the fact that you're working on being a better person and creating a new life for yourself gives you the wherewithal to actually make it happen. When you start this transformation process, you have to put something in, and that thing is deep desire. and you put it in, like you prime the universal pump now to give you the energy, the vibration, to create the new thoughts, to create the new emotions, to create the new goals and objectives, to create the new relationships to take you on to that next level. This personal resurrection is a constant thing. And success is a continuous realization of a worthwhile purpose. So as we go through life, you will hit a plateau. You will feel happy and fulfilled, but something happens, something changes, and you want to make that move. You want to do better. You want to have more. Then that's the resurrection. The interesting thing, though, in the resurrection, one of the interesting, you might say, similitudes of the resurrection story is when Jesus came back, his disciples didn't recognize him. And that's a symbolic meaning for us. That when you make your transformation to the new you, when you change your thoughts, have new thoughts, change your emotions, change your habits, and when you start changing your relationships, the old people won't know you. The old playmates won't know you. And let me tell you something, folks, that's not a bad thing. Okay, because in the whole resurrection process, you cannot take the old people with you. So many of our athletes get in trouble when they try to take their playmates from the playground to the big stage, to national television, to national prominence, to wealth. We've seen so many athletes get tunneled and tanked because they brought people with them whose level of consciousness had not grown. Even when people have transformation without elevation. What do you mean, Doc? Like when a person hits the lottery, okay, that's literally instantaneous transformation. You have the money on a material level. You have the money that you say you needed that would transform your life. But if the consciousness does not grow with it, studies have shown that that money is soon gone. And so for those listening today, the resurrection process is a tool. It's a tool for you to constantly grow, to consistently grow towards your higher self. Never become complacent. Never become so happy about where you are that you don't want to change, because guess what? The river of time is always moving. There's so many people that worked on jobs for 30 and 40 years, and they get down to the end and the politics have changed and now there's no pension. Or they encourage them to invest in this and invest in that, and now there's no money. And so transformation is about being aware of your surroundings and making the necessary steps to recreate them in accordance with your new vision for yourself. So the growth process, we'll go through it. The main thing is that we grow through it. So let us summarize this resurrection of the new you. Number one, that life operates based on change, time, choice, and principles. And the goal of life is to be congruent with those things to make them work for you. To recognize that you were created for a purpose, and the way that you realize that purpose is to go through these growth steps. Number two, that everything has a season. That when we go through our transformation, our changes as human beings, that everything we do is superimposed upon a world vibration. Sometimes the world goes crazy. We have to keep our minds in sanity about us. We have to create new thoughts, new emotions, new habits, new relationships so that we can pivot. The pivot is critical. Sade's on the call tonight. We did a whole piece on pivot. How so many times you hit a point, you got to make a pivot. Well, resurrection is a type of pivot. To understand that this growth thing happens in stages. That you're always going to get unhappy. If you're not getting unhappy about your present condition and wanting to be more, do more, and have more, then you need to go back and meditate a bit. because our growth is a consistent, continuous process. And then finally, to master the tools of transformation, master the tools of resurrection. And those 4 tools are: number 1, to assess where you are, to be honest with yourself, to look at your strengths and weaknesses, look at what makes you happy, what makes you unhappy, look at what you will do, look at what you won't do again. Number 2, to really create a new path, that once you've seen who you really are, understand that you can change. The second law of success says, be not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind. So many times we let our circumstances determine our potential. And so this idea of what are the corrective action I have to do now to change my life. Third key is to set new goals. That if you don't set goals that are specific, measurable, set in advance, realistic, based on where you are, covering a certain time period, you will stay stuck where you are. And then finally, step 4, to make a plan, to make a commitment, to write it out, to make it happen. Because you can be what you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. And you can have anything you want to have, always knowing that the best is yet to come. Happy Easter, happy resurrection, happy new you. And so it is. Be sure to go to our website, herbertharris.com. Get your copy of the 12 Universal Laws of Success. Listen to this message and share it with at least 3 other people. Reach out to me and be sure to be with us on Monday night at the Resurrection webinar, New You Resurrection webinar. Go to herbertharris.com, click on the link, and register for the free webinar. And so it is. Thanks for joining us this Easter. Happy Easter, happy New Year, happy New You, happy everything, happy life. Make it a great life. And so it is. Always knowing that the best is yet